Okay, I've got my GoPro all set up here, and we can go for a little ride in the Jaguar XKR. Get a feel for the vehicle, and I can give you a little bit of information about it. Again, this thing is completely cold. Starts up fine. Right now you can see, after it starts, all the dash lights are clear. There's nothing going on here. Set back up. And let's go for a quick drive. One of the things you'll notice about this car is if you don't have it in sport mode, it does not actually start off in first gear unless you really push it. And the reason for that is the engine. And this is a 4-liter dual overhead cam 32 valve supercharged V8. And it's a positive displacement supercharger, so it actually generates tons of torque right off the line. I think Jaguar said that this particular car produces over 300 pound-feet of torque, starting at 1800 RPM all the way to redline. And I think the peak production is 370 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. So it has an incredibly wide power band, and that makes it not necessary to use first gear all the time. Really, when you put it in the sport mode, it becomes a lot more aggressive. It really feels like it wants to go. And if you're not in sport mode, it's just a luxury grand touring car, which is what this vehicle is designed to be. It's not designed to compete directly against the Corvette or the Viper, or Mustangs, Camaros, things like that. This car was designed to compete against the Ferrari 456 GT and the Porsche 911 Targa. And that was its target market. It wasn't quite as expensive as the Ferrari, and I think it was a little bit more expensive than the Porsche. I'm not 100% sure on that. The car is wonderful to drive. It brakes smooth, mostly because there are new front rotors, rear rotors, front and rear pads. All that stuff's new, but it's nice and smooth. It pampers you a little bit, and it's sometimes deceptively fast. It's getting a little warm in here, so I'm going to turn on the air conditioning, which works great. It'll freeze you right out of the car, and with the kind of heat that the engine produces, I would say you need air conditioning on this car. If it's above 70 degrees out, it's going to get pretty warm in the cabin unless you have the top down. I don't have it down right now just because of wind noise and everything else. So I've owned this car for a few years, and I really do like the car. It turns a lot of heads. A lot of people really like this car, myself included, but I have to make some room for like a 69 Mustang project that I'm going to be doing, for my dad, with my dad a little bit, kind of fulfilling one of his hopes for his old race engine to run again. So we'll, I guess, get that set up, and this thing needs to go as part of the process. One of the things you'll notice when you drive it is how smooth it is relative to what you're probably expecting it to drive like. It's actually a fairly comfortable ride. It's obviously not set up to be a Lincoln Town car, but it is relatively smooth, and it's deceptively fast, mostly because of the outrageous amount of torque that it develops off the line. It pulls away from stoplights, never running about 2,500 RPM, so you think you're taking it easy, and you look in the rearview mirror and everybody's 20 car lengths behind you. So it's pretty entertaining that way. I happen to use cruise control on this car quite a bit because it keeps me out of trouble. At least I think it will keep me out of trouble. I use it so frequently that it's kind of second nature on the highways and freeways as far as I'm concerned at this point. So one of the things, problem areas on this car is what they call the green shower. The green shower is a failure of the hydraulic locking and hydraulic line system at the front of the convertible top. And the hydraulic fluid they use in the brakes and in the convertible top is green. So when it fails, you get the quote-unquote green shower. This particular car, just before I purchased it, I actually had to spend an extra day at a hotel in Chicago where I bought the car. I had to spend an extra day there while they completed the installation of that new hydraulic lines all the way to the back of the car where the motor for the roof exists. It's a pretty tedious process. There's quite a few hours involved because you have to tear out, you know, almost all the interior. You have to, you know, pull away some of the panels and things like that to get those hydraulic lines routed. So it's pretty expensive. This car should never give you a problem with that, which is kind of cool. Also, the fuel pumps have been replaced, and the XKR uses 2 fuel pumps. Both are in tank, they're identical. The XK8 uses 1, the XKR uses 2, just because it needs the extra fuel volume. They don't want to short the engine in any way. I can tell you that it's a relatively difficult procedure as well with the convertibles. I don't know if it's quite as bad with the coupes, but with the convertibles it's pretty difficult, and the parts are really expensive. I did that a couple years ago. There's maybe 10,000 miles on the fuel pumps on this car. I doubt you'll ever run into an issue with that either. So it's good to know that a couple of the frequent mechanical issues, or more common mechanical issues on this car, have been dealt with. I can tell you that the way it drives is very smooth. It doesn't feel like a car you really need to put your foot into. It doesn't demand to show off. You'll see other people that'll pull up next to you and they'll want to race you, or really they'll want to see how fast the car is, because there aren't a lot of cars that can actually legitimately race this car. And I've never really felt the need to show them, because that's not what this car is about. This car has, you know, it's confidence inspiring. It doesn't feel like you have to prove yourself in it. But you know, if you wanted to, you certainly could. You could put it in the sport mode and run away from almost anybody on the road. Obviously, some of the newer cars have gotten really fast. And, you know, a new Mustang GT is probably going to outrun this car, to be honest. I think a new Mustang GTs have about 425 horsepower. They run mid-12s, high 12s, something like that. That's ridiculously fast. But I guarantee you, if you pull up in an intersection with this car and a Mustang GT, the majority of the GT drivers aren't going to know that this car just won't stomp them. And most people would think that this is the nicer car, at least I believe so. I think this is probably one of the most beautiful cars that's been designed in the past 30 years or so. And the bottom line is, it doesn't drive like a Mustang GT. It drives like a European high-performance luxury car, which is what it is. So, different worlds, I guess. You can see right now, getting up to freeway speeds, you know, I'm already up to 60 miles per hour, and it never turned more than 2,500 RPM. It didn't even try. Up the hill onto the freeway, it's just easy for this car. On the freeway now, cruising about 60 miles per hour. It's 55-ish. Super smooth. I don't know if you can see them in the video, but you can look at the mirror flaps, or the sun visors. You can see they're not bouncing, they're not jumping around, because it's actually really smooth in here. The car rides down the road beautifully, doesn't make any noise, doesn't have any problems. I don't think that this car leaks anything at all. I haven't noticed anything. Everything works on it, from sport mode to the cruise control to the heated seats and the fog lamps and the power mirrors, all that stuff. The car is really well appointed, and everything works. looking at the navigation system, which is obviously way out of date. This is back in the days when they used DVDs to control the navigation system. I don't even know if you can get updated information for these cars in this navigation system, but it's not touchscreen. It's pretty well out of date. In a pinch, it can certainly help. You just pop it up real quick. You have easy access to it, and you might be able to figure out how to get on the freeway from whatever your location is. But I find myself, more often than not, driving somewhere where I actually kind of want to get a lay of the land, and it'll say that I'm driving through a pond or a lake, which, was there 10 or 15 years ago, and now it's obviously a freeway. So, don't have a whole lot else I can really tell you about the car. It makes you feel special when you drive it. It's really been enjoyable to have. It just turns heads. That's not necessarily why I bought the car. I bought this car because it was my dream car when I was a kid. I thought, wow, this thing's just the best thing that's ever been built. And it is really, really a great car. Really treats you special. But I guess with another project coming up, it's just time for me to let this one go. So here's a quick little jaunt, nothing too crazy, give you a feel for the car, give you a little bit of background information, show you that everything works great. Some of the things you'll want to know if you do see one of these cars with the trouble codes and stuff. The check engine lights are very notoriously difficult to clear on these cars. You can't just clear it by by disconnecting the battery for a little while, plugging the battery in and starting it up. It won't clear until you drive for a while. So you can see when I started it up, no trouble codes. I'll show you in just a second. If we had a red light or something, that there's still no trouble codes. Some of the common ones that you might see, the ABS brake controller, the computer controller, is a problem area on these cars, and they're not factory serviceable, but you can cut them open and fix the bad soldering on the circuit board, and this one has been done. It's a $3,000 replacement if you don't do that. You can see again, no check engine lights. So it's nice to know that that's been fixed. That's not going to give you a problem either. Performance, restricted performance is another thing you might see. That's basically anything that causes an engine problem. The cruise control won't even power up if there is a current check engine code or engine code, or if it's a latent code that hasn't been cleared yet. The cruise control won't even power up, and it'll trip for misfire. It'll trip for anything that it thinks is wrong, and it's I really haven't had too many electrical problems with this car, really at all. But when they happen, when you have something wrong with these cars, it can be very expensive. They're really reliable, or at least pretty darn reliable, if you just take care of the basic maintenance. They're pretty solid. From everything that I've read on JaguarForums.com, which is a great site to visit to find out more information about these cars, and to get some tips and tricks on how to fix anything that might come up without spending an arm and a leg. But I can tell you that they're pretty reliable, so long as you maintain them, take care of them like you should, and a lot of people don't. I think they're probably a pretty solid car. Some of the common codes you'll see that scan across right above the odometer, actually, it'll read text across for whatever the issue is, if it's performance restricted or ASC not available, track not available, transmission fault. Those are some ones that you'll want to keep your eye open for. Those can be some big problem areas for this particular car. And if there's nothing that's popping up, then great, good news. That's what you want to see, because you don't want to get into a situation where you don't know what's wrong with the vehicle. The ABS control computer could be $3,000 to have it replaced. You could be dealing with an engine misfire because it's not getting fuel. One of the fuel pumps could be out. To do the fuel pumps on this car, $1,500 with Jaguar parts if you use an independent shop, $2,000 if you go to Jaguar. The fuel pumps themselves and the parts alone from Jaguar are going to run you about $700. So if you can find the parts for inexpensive from AutoZone, if they are direct replacement parts, great. If you can't, sometimes you have to swallow your medicine and go to Jaguar and get the right parts, or online and get it at a slight discount. So that's about all I have to do to talk about this car today. Thanks for stopping in and watching my video.